Hello everyone, I'm glad you could join me for episode 11 of Spectrum Talk. Yes, we're almost up to 12 episodes. Now, I wasn't quite sure whether to do a series of 12 of these and then have a little bit of a break, or just to keep going and going and going and going. Tell me what you think, but there's quite a lot of subjects to still cover, so we're not going to run out of material anytime soon. Now, the last Spectrum Talk, we had a look at gaming icons, where I spoke about my favourite ever character on the ZX Spectrum, which is Horace. So we're sort of like in the similar vein to that. One big character on the ZX Spectrum at the time was Daley Thompson. No, he was based on a real person. He wasn't like made up like Jet Set Willie or anything. With home computing, and particularly the Spectrum, it was all about, for kids at least, bringing the quality of arcade games actually into the home. It was pretty special there. It was like living in the future. Now, as a kid, I used to do swimming lessons. When I come out, there was two arcade game cabinets there which captured my imagination. There was Asteroids, and also next to it was a really cool game called Track and Field, where essentially it was a number of different events, and you could control the speed of your athlete by really thumping the buttons as quickly as you possibly can. So as you can imagine, these consoles or these arcade cabinets took a bit of a pounding. The arcade machine was by Konami from 1983, and essentially you got qualifying time to go on to the next event. Now, the events involved the 100 metres dash, the long jump, javelin, 110 metres hurdles, hammer, high jump, and it was all 1 to 2 players. I think 4 players might be able to compete, but most of the time if you're a single player putting your coin in, you have to try and beat the computer by hitting these two buttons as quickly as you possibly can. Now, I don't know how much repairs these machines required every now and again, but you imagine you invent a machine where you got to hit it as hard as you can, as quickly as you can, it probably isn't going to last very long. But that arcade machine was a huge hit, so of course people or coders, production companies wanted to bring this game in particular to the home computers. Now, Ocean did convert Track and Field eventually in 1988, although this was a bit rubbish, but beforehand they had an idea, because they didn't have the Track and Field license then, to actually bring out a similar game to really flood the market, but they didn't have any like talisman to actually run with it. But who was big at the time? Who was big in sports and really popular with the public? Well, we're looking at Daley Thompson, and of course he was good at the decathlon, so there was 10 particular sports we can convert into a game, and boom, you have your own track and field. Daley Thompson won the decathlon Olympics in 1980 in Moscow. He won the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles with his rivalry with the German Jürgen Hinkson. And he also won the World Championships decathlon in 1983 in Helsinki. So this chap was ideal. So Ocean signed up Daley Thompson, and they released their game Daley Thompson's Decathlon in 1984. It had more events than Track and Field, of course, because 10 for the decathlon, which I've written down because I knew I'd forget. So that involves the 100 metres, long jump, shot put, high jump, 400 metres, 110 metres hurdles, discus, pole vault, javelin, and the 1500 metres. Now, this game was a huge hit. I played it for weeks and weeks, maybe even months on my computer. Friends liked it as well. And there were two basic options. One, like the Track and Field game, you could hit your rubber keyboard for all your worth with 2 fingers, although that wasn't the best way of doing it, or you could have a joystick connected via the interface and waggle it for all that it's worth. Now, you can imagine these arcade machines beforehand took a lot of damage but a bit more robust hitting the buttons. A joystick is a lot more fragile. And I'm sure I'm not the only person, not necessarily just on the ZX Spectrum, because it's converted to a few different systems, that went through a number of joysticks at an alarming rate. They took a hell of a lot of damage. Now, the 100 metres is basically waggling the joystick as quickly as you can over roughly about 10 seconds. These joysticks tended to have like micro switches and repeatedly pounding them, which they weren't designed for, so heavy damage that eventually they would break. Other events on there like the long jump wasn't too bad, but even the shot put, in real life, if you look at the shot put, it's just a guy spinning around a small concrete circle and then launching it. In Daley Thompson's decathlon, he actually had a run up with the shot put, so waggling it as quickly as you can. That was the same with the javelin and other sports as well, and particularly the 400 metres. It was sustained damage. So great fun, but very costly to keep this game going. As I say, you could try on the keyboard, but you wouldn't get as good scores as far distances as your friends, so no kid in their right mind is going to do that. I remember the first joystick that got damaged or stopped working was a joystick really designed for flight simulations and those sort of things, called a Quick Shot 2 I had a red fire button on the top, rectangular, like a trigger button as well, like a control yoke. And rather than that, it did seem a bit fragile. You couldn't get very good speed on it, and then that broke. I had a number of Kempston joysticks which just couldn't take the continued pummeling. So you know, the cost of playing this game was far in excess of buying the original tape. Probably the best joystick I had for Daley Thompson Decathlon was a handheld one called the ProTech. It was handheld because it fitted in the palm of the hand. It has like a curved underside, and the joystick part was very, very small, so you could really go that back and forth really, really quickly and get maximum distances and beat all the world records there. But eventually friends come around, giving that a bit of a pounding. I've taken it as well, and eventually that broke as well. And this wasn't the only game like that. There was to be a flood of ones afterwards, which it was a kingdom of woe. And I think maybe these games were designed to increase joystick sales, because normally a joystick would last years and years and years. I think some of these were only lasting like a few months. Now, Ocean had a huge hit on their hands with Daley Thompson Decathlon, up to a point where really they wanted to bring out a sequel. Now, how do you bring out a sequel? There's no in real sport, there's no sequel to the Decathlon, 10 other sports, so they was really scratching their head. So they went to the drawing board and come up with other sports that Daley Thompson could possibly do, and released Daley Thompson's Super Test, so if anyone had any joysticks left over which were still functioning or weren't damaged, then they got a new chance to actually destroy these. Now, some of these sports that were on Daley Thompson's Super Test were absolutely comical. It had pistol shooting, which that was just aiming and fire, so it's quite handy on the joystick there. That was quite low. Then rowing. Again, that replaced the 110 metres hurdles and the 100 metres sprinting, but again it is waggling joysticks. Again, we're just watching different graphics on the screen. Daley Thompson would never row. Then it was football penalties. Cycling, again the joystick took a bit of a smash in. Springboard diving, where you hit the fire button in time with the feet landing on the springboard, jumping up and then do the joystick for somersaults. Ski jump, giant slalom, and then tug of war. Now, one of the complaints about the original game, Daley Thompson's Decathlon, at the time was the character was pure white and Daley Thompson was black. I'm sure there wasn't any racial intent intended at that point, because they just picked the colour palette that worked best on the system. White did stand out better against the red on the track or the blue. Black would have blended in. So there we go. People found ways to complain about anything. And because these games were huge hits, there was a number of other games that come out pretending to be these, or trying to cash in, because they just knew, right, all we got to do is program good graphics, someone waggles the joystick, the CPU works out how quick they've done it, gives them a time or gives them a score. There was a number of these which also broke joysticks as badly as Daley Thompson, but one of the best ones I think was Hyper Sports, which I'm yet to review on the channel. If I do it, there's no way I'm doing it with my USB joystick, no way siree, so I'll probably be on the keyboard, so we might need a poke to get to the next stage. But basically these ones was swimming, skeet shooting, long horse gymnastics, which you might remember from a TV program. It was on there quite a lot, where basically you waggle the joystick as quickly as you can to get a run up, controlling Hyper Bill. You press the fighter button where he kicks a pommel horse, and then waggle the joystick for as many somersaults as you possibly can. Then there's archery, triple jump, and weight lifting. So I lost to Daley Thompson Decathlon, I lost roughly about 3 or 4 joysticks there as a kid, which was quite depressing at the time. Tears everywhere, but that's a part of growing up, and you never learnt my lesson. But you know, if nowadays a game comes out like that, there's no way I'm doing it. There was a similar game, I think, that came out on the PlayStation a bit later on, and it wasn't a joystick for that because you're on your 4 buttons, and there was a trick you do where you put a sock over the control and just rub over the buttons really quickly, and then you get a big blister on your finger. Anyway, did you have Daley Thompson Decathlon or Super Test or Hyper Sports or any of the other ones? How many joysticks did you go through, or was you really good with it and you had the greatest joystick ever and it never got damaged at all. Let me know what that joystick was, because it must be made out of kryptonite or something. So thank you for watching Spectrum Talk again. Next time we might be having a look at the Spectrum next. And take great care of yourself and a very fond goodbye.
Goodbye.